Hello everybody, Marco here. Today I wanted to do a video on a recent segment that I saw on the Young Turks about Dave Rubin. And the reason why I wanted to do that was because I think it shows some key components of what I think is definitely wrong with the left and some of their biggest sins that I included in the thumbnail there like envy, hypocrisy, and denial. So in regards to Dave Rubin, I mean, he's someone that I've just been following in the last month or two. I didn't really know anything about him prior to that, but basically, if you're familiar with this show, I really enjoy it just because it's so rare to find someone that is willing to have an honest conversation with someone and not try to push their point of view. So, like, Dave will invite really unique guests on his show, especially like when he invites professors in and he just gives them a chance to talk. And his interview style is very reminiscent of Larry King, where he's just like not trying to put the focus on him, or like you see a lot of like pundits now, they'll invite somebody on their show just so they can debate them and push their point of view on them and sort of create some drama. But Dave really doesn't do that. He just asks questions, follow-up questions, and really just lets the person being interviewed tell their story, which is quite rare in our political climate, shall we say. So I really enjoy it, but it's I don't quite feel bad for him because he's doing very well for himself. But anytime you go on the internet, man, or you look at comments from the left, I guess they really like to be hard on him. One of the criticisms I see the most is, I guess they like to say that he's dumb and whatnot, and that not really smart on the topics he's talking about. So I think I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, from what I see, he just, I guess, recently made the jump from the left over to libertarianism, or classical liberalism, as he called it. And that can be quite hard because university really doesn't prepare you for classical liberalism or libertarianism, in my opinion. It's if you really want to become a well-educated libertarian, it's something you kind of have to do on your own. Just read a lot on your own, and people might not have the time. I always stress that it's like, don't try and sway somebody to your point of view in one like 5 minute conversation. It's just not going to happen, right? You're really asking people to make a big leap, and it'd be quite silly for them to make such a big leap in 5 minutes. I wouldn't trust anyone that switches from like being a hard left to like a libertarian in 5 minutes. I mean, it's just too much of a big leap, right? And for somebody like Dave Rubin, I mean, I don't know. I guess he's often on the road with Jordan Peterson, and then his show must take a lot of time. So how much time does he have to read up on libertarian theory? So you gotta let people go at their own pace. But I guess the left, I don't know. I guess they're so bitter that I'm not sure how prominent he was, but that a prominent figure. I mean, on the Young Turks, to go from there to all of a sudden, bashing all their ideas and going to libertarianism, I guess it kind of looks bad on them, and so they're just trying to discredit him at every turn and whatnot. But anyway, I wanted to break down some of the segments on the Young Turks, because they just did a whole piece on Dave Rubin. It wasn't all about Dave Rubin; it was about Milo Yiannopoulos and Dave Rubin. But I just wanted to break it down because I think it shows some aspects of the left that are endemic to just their whole overall ideology, and why I think it doesn't quite work out. And so on the very first one that I want to go over with, I guess this individual, this Anna Kasparian, is going to go on the attack on Dave Rubin for saying that he's an intellectual lightweight because he just lets his host talk, right? And I never seen a full segment from her. I just seen bits and clips, like Steven Crowder does an amazing parody of them. That after seeing a few clips, I mean, it seems to be accurate. Where the few times that they do get somebody on their show that disagrees with them, all they can do is berate them, like scream at them, racist, misogynist, anti-Semitic. They're just like on the edge of their seat, man. They just want to take any opportunity to scream those words at them. I guess that's how they make their living. And so she wants to challenge Dave Rubin, saying, hey, you're not smart enough to be able to call out your guests and stuff you do like that. You're too civil by allowing your guests, by sitting down and having a normal conversation. So let's go over this particular clip and then let's talk about it.
Notion now that it's a very intellectual thing to just allow people to come on your show and say whatever they want without challenging them. That's what real journalist is. I mean, that's a real intellectual. No, it's lazy. It's because you don't know anything. It's because you're nothing more than an intellectual lightweight, okay? And a perfect example of that is Dave Rubin.
Okay, so like what I saw there was, in my opinion, a pretty serious attack on Dave Rubin. I mean, you're basically calling him a dumbass, essentially. And, you know, to me, that's hypocrisy coming from you. I mean, the letter that I've seen, I mean, you make no effort yourself, and this, I believe her name is Kasparian, makes no effort whatsoever to get educated on the other person's point of view. She's constantly strawmanning and constantly, like I said, this whole show is built on just taking whatever little crumbs you can get and calling the other side racist, misogynist, just oversimplifying the issues just in an effort to I guess people are calling it virtue signaling, which seems to be right, which seems to be pretty an accurate description of what these people are doing. So I mean, for you to accuse other people of being intellectually lightweights, I mean, that's just quite rich coming from somebody like you. You know, I'm of the opinion that no matter who you sit across from, you can always, I mean, learn something from the other side. And so we always have to be cautious, I think, of thinking that we know everything, because I think that, and Jordan Peterson points this out in his book too, you know, only totalitarians believe that they know everything, that possess all the knowledge, and that there's nothing more to learn, right? Because if you're a totalitarian and you believe you have nothing else to learn, then you feel justified in imposing your belief system and your way of life and your actions onto other people. Like, after all, you know everything, so of course you can't possibly be wrong about what you're saying. So I would, you know, if I were this woman as Anna Kasparian, I would encourage you to consider this quote from Socrates right here: the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. So, you know, embrace this idea that, you know, that yes, you know, although you might have spent a long time formulating your beliefs and whatnot, you always have to leave the option open that you could be wrong. Like me, myself, I believe in objective reality, but I also believe that it's probably impossible for humans to objectively know that what they know is true 100%, right? You always have to leave that little skepticism and invite criticism to strengthen your belief. That's one of the things I particularly like. Is anybody that disagrees with me, I always kind of like try and look at their argument and be like, is there any possible truth to what they're saying, you know? And so if you invite the best possible criticism and you're able to refute that with logic and facts and whatnot, then you can also be more safe in your belief system that what you know is actually true knowledge instead of, you know, conjecture and whatnot. So anyway, that was the first clip that I wanted to break down, and then the second one highlights another aspect that is endemic of the left, and that is envy. And let's look at that clip now.
I'm far more intellectual, and as a result, I refuse to engage in a debate or an argument. I allow people to make their case on my show. No, you're lazy. He was lazy when he worked here. He's lazy now with his ridiculous show where he proves time and time again that he doesn't know anything. And why do I know he's lazy? Why did he really leave the Young Turks? Can I please finally tell the truth about why he left the Young Turks? He wanted to make a six-figure salary to host a 30-minute-a-week show when everyone here, you know, because we work for an independent news company, was getting paid far less while working 12-hour days. That's why Dave Rubin left the company. And now all of a sudden he's getting funded by the Koch brothers, and all of a sudden his opinions are very different. He has no political identity. He is not an honest actor. He is not an intellectual. He is a fraud. Plain and simple, and he's giving platforms to people like Milo Yiannopoulos on his crappy show. That's who Dave Rubin is.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there, but essentially what that segment really shows is, I think it highlights envy as a trait that is particularly endemic of the left, and that I think explains a lot of their reasoning and actions. So you'll see her there that she brings up that the fact that apparently the Koch brothers are funding Dave Rubin, and that's the only reason why he says what he says, and the only reason why he's even remotely successful is because there's this nefarious plan by the Koch brothers. And this is something that's repeated by leftists ad nauseum about Dave Rubin, and honestly, none of them have been able to provide any numbers as to it. So the only link that they seem to provide is there's an Institute for Human Studies that is in part funded by the Koch brothers by Million, and they have a small little segment called Learn Liberty, which they produce YouTube videos about classical liberalism and libertarianism. And they collaborated with Dave Rubin briefly, and so what they did is they cut and pasted a few segments of his shows, added in their own little slides, and they have like 15 or 20 YouTube videos like this that are 2 to 5 minutes long. And my question is, how much money do you think he got paid for that? I don't think very much. I don't think he can make a living off the money he must have received from that. But apparently you're saying that that's like his only source of income. But I mean, it takes 2 minutes to go to his Patreon page and see that he gets close to $30,000 a month from over, like, I believe 4,000 Patreons to do what he does. On top of that, he gets money for his work he does with Jordan Peterson, and I imagine he's got other things going on. So to actually try and draw this link, I mean, is quite ridiculous. And we have to ask ourselves, why would you do this? Why would you do that? And the answer lies in envy, of course, because you heard you heard it from herself. She works 12-hour days on this show, and she can't stand the fact, apparently, that she doesn't make as much money as he does. And so that really drives at her, and she can't understand why, so she has to create this whole Koch brothers conspiracy to justify why that's happening. And I think, I don't want to say it's sad because, then that kind of makes me judgmental, but at the same time, I think Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot too, and highlights it with his analysis of the story of Cain and Abel, right? So Cain and Abel are both brothers, and they're both offering sacrifices to God, and God favors Abel's sacrifices and rewards him, and so he becomes prosperous. He rejects Cain's sacrifices, and so Cain is suffering and has a harder life. And so Cain becomes so bitter at this fact that he takes vengeance and kills Abel. And why does he do this? Because he's sacrificing and he becomes bitter, and he can't stand all this bitterness, and so he curses God himself, and strikes down Abel, which God favors. And this is sort of kind of like what Anna Kasparian is doing here, right? So she's sacrificing, putting in the hours and whatnot, and she can't possibly understand how Dave Rubin is having such success leaving the Young Turks. And so she's become very bitter at that. So, that's why you'll see her on her show, yelling a lot, berating her guests, not really offering any real deep, meaningful analysis, because she is just so full of hate and bitterness. And, we have to watch out that we obviously don't become that ourselves. So if I had to offer any advice, it would be this, why don't you honestly sit down and try and figure out why Dave is having success? Maybe some of your fundamental principles are wrong, and that's why you're not having as much success, And that's hard work, though. Make no joke about it. It's really hard to examine yourself and blame yourself for what is happening. It's much easier to blame outside forces, or as Jordan Peterson would say, it's much easier to curse being than really look at what yourself and what you're doing, right? And so that's envy in a nutshell right there. So that, combined with her hypocrisy of of accusing Dave Rubin of not being intellectual when she offers little to none herself, and then her just denial of other people's point of view, and so that she can scream out racist and whatnot and feel good about herself. I mean, I think these are problems that are everywhere on the left. And you know, I don't really quite know how to tackle any of that. Like, how do you tackle like emotion like envy in someone? Like, you know, like for a longest time I focused on economics and trying to make rational arguments, but you know, in the last little while I've really learned that we're not going to get anywhere with that, because you know, if you're so bitter, if you're full of bitterness and scorn, you know, reason's not going to work for you. So that's why I've actually been looking at Jordan Peterson a lot with his psychology. I think the answer lies somewhere with psychology and whatnot. So anyway, that's the analysis I have on that. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to post it on the videos. I try to get back to anyone that does so respectfully. If you like the video, make sure to like it. It does help with the search algorithm, I noticed from some of the other videos. And yeah, link to my blog and Twitter below, as well as the segment from the Young Turks there. And that's it for now, guys. I'll catch you next time. Bye.